screen. All right. So, we should be streaming.
Okay, very
all right.
good.
So, let me explain to everyone in Russian what is going on. And hopefully some people will be watching here. Дорогие друзья, мы возвращаемся в эфир с Джерми Боулинг. У нас была маленькая проблемочка, что вы слышали меня, я слышал и себя, и Джерми, но никто не смог слышать Джерми. Поэтому, если вы сейчас слышите вот эту трансляцию, пожалуйста, скажите сразу, если вы слышите Jeremy. So, Jeremy, could you maybe just say something nice so that way the people will tell me whether they can actually hear you?
Привет! Привет, my friends!
Very happy and optimistic. Okay, I have not yet. Please, someone, пожалуйста, кто-нибудь ответьте, если мы слышим Джереми или нет, чтобы мы можем наконец-то делать этот интервью. Пока никто мне ничего не пишет, но количество людей, которые собирают, которые смотрят программу, увеличивается. So I was just saying that the quantity of people who is watching keeps increasing and increasing, and yet no one will write and tell me whether they hear you or not. Well, anyways, I guess, Jeremy, in order to... he says he can. He can hear you.
Nice, very good.
All right. So, anyways... Тогда, итак, ребята, и мы идем дальше. Заново мы делаем интервью с Джереми Боулинг. И, может быть, вы заметили, что в нижнем правом углу экрана, что есть какая-то зона. И вы можете, на самом деле, нажать на эту зону. Упс, нет, мы не хотим этого. Нажать на эту зону, чтобы отправлять нам деньги. Почему нам нужны деньги? Хороший вопрос. Может быть, даже философский вопрос. Но нам нужны деньги для того, чтобы делать перевод этого интервью. Многие хотели, чтобы я с Джереми общался, но я не способен делать прекрасные интервью, и более того, я очень занят. Поэтому, если вы хотите интервью, нам надо собрать деньги. И если, если только человека вообще 5 дает 100 рублей, то переводчик не будет ничего переводить за 500 рублей. Поэтому надо, пожалуйста, поддерживайте программу. И простите за хаос маленьких окошек. Как вы видите, у меня много проблем на программе перед сном. Это эксперимент. Я ни разу, никогда делал вот такую программу. Okay, Jeremy, sorry about that. Anyways, my first question to you, which unfortunately you already answered. I know it's never quite as fun to answer the same question twice. But I was kind of wondering, you mentioned that basically from sort of like a point A to a point B, you had a very different view of Russia. You, by some chance, you started to watch Russian movies, and now you have a completely different worldview. Some people call that like a red pilling factor, but in relation to the Matrix movie, but that usually has to do with the alt-right and stuff. Many people even describe then how they became a feminist or something. So basically, what was your mentality before? What is it like now, and how did Russian movies change it?
My mentality before was Russia was the enemy. You got to keep an eye on them at all costs, and whatever we got to do to contain them, we must do to contain them. As a young kid, I had an uncle that served in the service, and he used to buy me T-shirts like "Better Dead Than Red," "Kill a Commie for Mommy," and it was very hostile towards Russia. As a small child, my grandma used to tell me, if I do not behave, the Russians will come take me to Siberia, where I don't, I guess I would live in a gulag.
Wow, Jeremy, that's a little much. That is a new one. Actually, when I was a kid, we did have like I don't know if was it Kill the maybe it was Kill the Russians, but you know how there's cowboys and Indians, but the Indians are always the bad guys you want to kill.
Yeah.
It was sort of like U.S. military versus Russian military, but the Russian military was always bad. The question is, does the media create those sort of desires in us? We just got a message, a thank you message for 1,000 rubles. Thank you. We're getting close to get a translation. But that's what was really interesting was that, like, a quick side question. Do you think as little kids we do this ourselves, or the media creates this in our minds?
I think it's complete environment. I mean, I think we're taught this. Especially when when I was a kid in the 70s, there was still Cold War chill going on. And It's completely through the media, I think. I think if you took a small Russian child who knew nothing about anything and a small American child who knew nothing about anything, and you put them in a playground, they would just play together, right? That's just, I think this is stuff that is taught, and our media teaches that, and I think it's completely media driven to advance a certain scenario that the American government wants the average American to have.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the thing is, it's also a question of proof, because very often people say, Hollywood is rigged, it's the CIA is in there. But it's also sort of an organic process, because a lot of it depends on money. But anyways, that's getting into conspiracy land. Again, let's go back to then, what did you see in these Russian movies where you were like, that's changing my mentality? Because what if, hypothetically, someone could say, well, you're just watching propaganda from the B source instead of the A source. Okay. So now you're just believing in B instead of A, and you're still a sucker or something.
Okay, sure. Well, what I was seeing in the World War II films was a different history that I was being taught growing up. And so what I would do is I would be confused and be like, wait a minute, how is this Russia defeating the Nazis when everybody knows it was the Americans? And as I started just doing my own independent research, I started finding out like Russians paid a huge price. And it was almost like America wanted to wait to the last minute to jump into the European theater and kind of, be a part of it. We talked earlier about how 27 million Russians gave their life. So I don't speak German. That's something that is just really, really huge and just a great sacrifice that's not honored at all. Instead, it seems like we just treat Russia with contempt, and we don't ever acknowledge the great sacrifice that was given to them. Now, as far as what you were saying about just being a sucker and believing just different propaganda, I would go to, is it Coppola? No, who was it that did the film Why We Fight? He was the guy who did.
Oh no!
Did, It's a Wonderful Life. Frank Capra. Mm-hmm. And Wonderful Life, great film, one of my favorite films of all time. So here you had an American who did a war film for America, honoring the sacrifice that Russia did. And so the question then becomes, I think, is when did America flip? When did America say, you know what, this is great, we're going to, be allies with Russia and fight this war, to now all of a sudden, Nazism has been defeated and Russia's the enemy. And I think it's somewhere with Truman, I think. Truman seemed to have this attitude of with World War II, let's just wait till we get into the European theater, and we'll let Russia do a lot of the heavy lifting, and who knows, maybe some of the Russians will in the process also. Yeah. So I don't know. Did that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah. And in fact, that was one of the interesting things. Is I think it's hard to say whether FDR would have dropped the bombs had he lived, but it was definitely Truman who came in at just the right time to get that Cold War started, and he seems to be someone who was very responsible for that. I think someone sent me this article about some American general who, it was something related, I wish I had it in front of me, but basically I think he committed suicide, or basically it was something where he sort of gave his life and then swore some sort of allegiance to Russia and died, but he was also one of the key players who could have actually stopped Truman from averting the Cold War. Good old mysterious deaths are always food for conspiracy theories. But besides World War II, what can we tell about Russians from their movies? Maybe we could divide this into the Soviet era and the post-Soviet era of movies, because in a lot of ways, I think one of the reasons why yourself and I are very popular is because Russians love getting the approval of Western people, in my own personal opinion. I don't know if you would agree, but so anyways, what's do you see in these movies? What sort of Russian world is portrayed for them to enjoy?
I think that the biggest thing that I take away, especially with the Russian war films, is a sense of community that is there. And I don't mean community like communism. I mean community as people. Like their stories are very much about gathering together over a common cause and helping each other. And I think when you look at like American films, what you find is just the opposite, where it's an individual who now inserts themselves into a scenario to
Yeah.
subvert it or take over. And I like the idea of community. I like the idea of one of the phrases that was taught to me by a guy named Vladimir, who I referred to as KGB, was I would rather have 100 friends than 100 rubles. And you see this sense in their film, this passion, this willingness for everybody to be a part of whatever the struggle is. And I noticed that in the war films when I started seeing, like, look at all these women in World War II fighting Nazis. Like, I mean, it's just so bizarre. I mean,
Well,
I
yeah.
would think just like G.I. Jane is the
And
first thing that I can think of.
and believe me, it's not a matter of feminism either, because that's really how it was. When I used to live in Kazakhstan, that was one thing that opened my eyes. Was I believe I was in Almaty one year on May 9th, and it was amazing how many female veterans there were. Of course, there were veterans of labor, who did their heroic duty, on the assembly line. However, there were, in fact, I lived around Uralsk later, and Magometova, I can't remember. I think Magometova was her name. She was a machine gunner, and she was a woman, and she was she died in the process of the war, but she became quite the local hero, and that really shows how sort of dire things got, that they had to just sort of put everybody on the front,
Right.
and that also is really never acknowledged
Right.
very much in Western movies.
No.
But now let's
Right.
jump ahead. Let's jump ahead, because pretty much everyone in Russia does not like modern Russian movies.
I know.
I would
it's
say
terrible.
I do. I don't either. I'm trying to think of like the last good Russian movie that I saw. Although I'm not a big movie guy, I was curious to see they made a superhero movie where there was a bear with a
Yes.
chain gun. I was kind of curious about that one, but otherwise, I mean, I don't know. These movies are not so great. So, what can you say about Russian movies of the last 5 or 10 years? First off, have you ever watched any of them?
Yeah, yes, I have. I've seen Stalingrad, some of the remake of the war films. I've seen Night Watch and Day Watch, which was kind of the Russian vampire
Yeah.
film, and
Yeah, those two I've
I
seen
think
the two
that's
watch. Yeah. I was saying I've seen Night Watch
yeah,
and Day
I
Watch,
think
but
those are the new ones.
yeah, but those are a little actually now they're a little old. I think they might even be over 10 years old. But anyways, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
No,
I don't know.
I haven't seen any of the newer stuff yet. It's
Mhm.
hard to get my hands on. Netflix doesn't really carry them much, and then I kind of gotta find them on DVD and order them. But one of the things that I've noticed is I kind of search through the Russian film industry, looking at trailers and whatnot. Is there seems to be a lack of horror in the
Yeah.
Russian, and I don't, it's curious to me that it's just not, in America, it's such a huge thing to see horror films and have a kind of a horror culture. And in Russia, it just doesn't exist. I think the closest thing I've seen is the Night Watch movie and Day Watch, but that was kind of
Yeah, but that wasn't quite horror. That was more like a dark fantasy, I guess. In fact, in our previous episode of this program, we got into a lot about fantasy fulfillment, and in a lot of ways, movies allow us to sort of. Here we have a question. How does the professor see the future if Trump, if they get rid of Trump and get someone in his place? Was the message, and the message is being read by a robot, but for some reason it's coming in very quiet. So you'll have to forgive us there. Maybe I can actually read the question in full. He said yes. If they get rid of Trump and they put someone in Hillary, will there be war? So if Trump goes, will there be war between the United States and Russia, Mr. Bowling?
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there would really be a war between America and Russia. I think what you would see is the continuation of what we've always had, are these little proxy wars that pop up. Russia is too big of a country and too formative of a foe for America to go on. We tend to like to get into these scrapes where we can just move in, devastate, get out. Or just get an area and occupy. And there's just no way America could occupy Russia. It's too big. And I would also say, too, I think the days of America being a superpower are over. I think as you look at the course of history, you find an interesting trend that happens, and it happens with the women of the culture. When the women of the culture become coarse and they become like men, the culture kind of corrodes and dies. And I think what you're seeing in America is really like Rome, is America is imploding on itself. And
So pardon me, are you saying it's more of is possibly a gender issue? Because I've actually sort of heard the opposite. It's more not that women become macho, it's that men become feminine, and that sort of erodes the security of society. That basically men are sort of the bearers of ideology, and a lot of times the ideology is the glue that keeps us together. Would you agree with that or not?
Yeah, I guess I would be tomato or tomato. I don't. Yeah, I think both are true in America. You see the feminization of the American man, the idea of what America was being bred out of the man, and that wouldn't surprise me if that turned out to be true.
Well, so do you ever experience that at work where people sort of expect you to be very nice and always polite and always happy and always smiling? Because I'm actually not from. In fact, some of the viewers want us to discuss our pasts a little bit together. But I'm from not the nicest neighborhood, and when you grow up in that sort of place, no one in the ghetto is afraid to be macho. Nobody. And then when you go into like the white corporate world, everyone always talks like this, always soft. Everything is like this. Even if they're firing you, they'll be like, you know what? We're just gonna have to let you go. It's this, and if you act even remotely angry, you need to be on pills and so on. But anyways, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm still aggravated that we had technical problems. So, let me ask you, what is your past? Where are you from? Is it true that what people are telling me? Are you from the ghetto? Kind of like me.
I am. I was born in Gary, Indiana.
Oh boy!
And
with Michael Jackson, maybe.
Yes, with Michael Jackson. Yes. And I was born in Gary, Indiana, and it is to a single mom. She was 16 when she had me, and we moved around a lot, so it was in low income housing. I was either in kind of the only white kid in the neighborhood, or in really bad trailer parks. And I moved around. I was probably in 13 different schools in 12 years, and I would say on my road to being a juvenile delinquent, just from that environment. There was no father figure around. A lot of crime, a lot of just doing what you had to do to survive. But I completely agree with you, Tim, on that assessment. When you're in those situations, as you're raised like that, you need your manhood to survive. You need to be able to have bravado to get past the immediate danger.
Well, yeah, and one thing I always remember is 1 year, it was in 6th grade, I played for a city team, not the school team, a city team, and I was the only white guy, right? And we were practicing, and this one kid, I think, offensive line, and he kept chop blocking me. When they try to slam their helmet and their shoulder pad into your knee on purpose. And I was telling him, man, you can't do that. That's illegal. And he looked at me, he was like, you see any referee around here? And that really sort of changed my worldview, because I think a lot of times when you get into sort of like white America, everyone absolutely 100% believes that everything is fair and that there's some sort of referee, and when you get out of that world and go to other people and other cultures, they know life isn't fair. You know what I mean? And so that was a big shock for me personally. But I see, you seem to have a pretty big house back there. First off, does that belong?
No. It's I live in a condo. I'm a very I guess it would be a flat in Russia, 2-bedroom flat, very simple man.
Well, I'll put it this way. I got out of my situation. I didn't become a drug addict, unlike pretty much every one of my buddies from 1st grade and beyond. So how did you get out of this bad situation in Gary, Indiana, to being you look like a pretty normal, straight-laced guy? I don't see any twitch as you're talking,
No, well, I started running into this phenomenon where all my friends were either dying of drug overdose or going to prison. And at the age of 19, I met my wife, and we started dating, and that kind of became my salvation and my rehab. We did something completely crazy. We dated for 3 weeks and then we ran away together, and have been together ever since. And it got me away from all the bad influence and just spending time with her, and that kind of straightened me out.
Well, that's, I guess, all it really takes then. So, anyways, a lot of people have been writing me. One question that I should have actually started the interview, like I said, I'm a bit flustered because of our situation with the audio that made us start the stream over again. But one of my favorite questions to ask anyone is, what questions are you asked the most? Asked so often that they drive you nuts. What is it? Do you have like a top 1, 2, 3 of those questions?
Yes. In the question, I would say the first question is, will you react to the bear digging in the garden, digging the potatoes out of the garden next to the woman? I get that like a million times.
Is that some kind of viral? Is that a viral video or something?
It's some kind of video, and it's right up there with the pigeon saluting Putin.
That way
when are you going to react to this? And it's like I get that one a lot, and then I get why are you interested in Russia a lot? How did you become interested in Russia a lot?
Yeah. And, well, we kind of covered that,
Yeah, and it's I get asked that a lot, and it's and you start to go through the explanation of how he got into it, the films and the documentary, and then you go through and answer it, and then it comes again, and I did a video about it too, so people could like reference the video. But a lot of times the questions still come in about it.
Yeah, in fact, that's even one of the reasons why I read a whole book about why I moved to Russia, because I got asked so many times that it drove me nuts. And I think it's also very telling, because what's one interesting? I don't know if you get asked this, but I was talking to 2 foreign guys the other day who live in Russia permanently. And basically, both of them and me, we constantly get asked, we've lived in Russia. The one guy, I think, for almost like 18 years. For me, it's now like 12. The other guy's here for 5 years or something. And we're asked all the time, well, do you like it? That's the dumbest effing question. Would anyone, if there was an Indian guy and he was in America, he was like, I have lived in America for 20 years and I own my own business. I wouldn't say, do you like it? I don't quite understand that. So one thing is, from the Russian audience, people are talking to you all the time. They're sure talking to me about you. They've been talking to me about you for a long time. What have you learned about Russian people and society through this Vkontakte Facebook connection to people?
How much we're similar. How much we want to be healthy and we want our families to be safe and we want to have a couple creature comforts and just live a nice, peaceful life. I've learned how beautiful and giving the Russian people are. They're the most amazing people group that I've met. When it came to the Putin video, and I was trying to get my video submitted on Putin's VK page, and it kept getting kicked back, saying, thank you, but you live in America, we don't do this. And I went on VK and asked my Russian friends, like, what should I do? I'm trying to get this done. And they just said, we'll send it in for you. And they did it just thousands and thousands of times. And these are people I've never met. I mean, just the willingness to help people, and I think, I did other interviews and people would say, that's amazing that Putin, took your question. And I don't think that's the amazing part. The amazing part is, 15 hours by plane away, thousands of people said, you know what, let's help this guy. Let's go do this. And they did it. I mean, to me, it's just an amazing testament of the fabric of the Russian society. I've been amazed at how wholesome they seem, how family oriented they seem, and it's it's just a long way from the ideas of evil empire and how can this evil empire be made up of all these nice people? There's a woman named Dasha who emails and messages me and my wife almost every day. And she's an older woman. She she henpecks in such a loving way and just looks out for you. And it's just an amazing thing. You don't see that in America. You just don't. You see everybody's out for themselves.
Well, yeah, and
you know, yeah.
and that's the one thing where it's even hard for me to believe sometimes, because in America we're such an individualistic society. It seems like it would be impossible to want to push other countries around when everyone's an individual. And, rule number one in America is don't tell people what to do. Even if maybe you think you should, we all just sort of, okay, I have my life, I'm here, you're there, you don't touch me, I don't touch you. And it's kind of the weird opposite, where in America, we basically we don't try to push each other, but then when it comes to foreign policy, we're sort of the most pushy. Whereas in Russia, as they say, there's this expression, "strana sovetov," the nation of councils, or I should say advice, where everyone wants to tell you what to do. Every old lady wants to tell you that you should put your gloves on in winter. But then, ironically, when it comes to foreign policy, they're kind of like, well, maybe North Korea's an awful regime. Who cares? Just do whatever you want. Iran, do whatever you want. We've stopped caring. Kind of a paradox. But anyways, I'm kind of going off on a side point. What I wanted to ask, though, is maybe something that might be a little serious here. But when you are a Western foreign person and you have a positive view of Russia, not to say a view whether of America, doesn't matter. If you have a positive view of Russia, you start to get a certain kind of criticism. And from what I understand, you've been getting a lot of harassment lately. And in fact, you had to shut down, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently, your Kontakte page. And everyone wanted me to tell them why. To be honest, Jeremy, this is the first time that I've ever spoken to you outside of like a 5-sentence blurt. So I don't really know you or anything. So please, could you tell us about your decision to turn off your Kontakte page and the level of harassment that you're experiencing?
The level of harassment is twofold. One is within America. I got friends and family who think that I'm absolutely crazy for having this view, and it's like, what is my crime? I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Trumbo, where he's labeled a communist, and he's just hanging out with. He's not a communist. He's just hanging out with people, and he's brought in on the McCarthy hearings, and he says, "What am I being charged with?" And nobody can tell you. It's just like, well, don't you know this person? So on that side, I shut down Facebook and Twitter because it was just becoming too much of an issue there. Now, when it comes to the VK side, what has happened is I've been getting a series of threats that have been coming through, and they seem very credible. They know things about me. Where I live and whatnot. And they're identifying themselves as Russians. A lot of the Russian friends have told me, no, they're Ukrainians. You just don't understand the difference of them. I don't know. And then on top of that, kind of mixed in with that, trying to just keep everything, calm for my family. There were also, this is going to be kind of embarrassing, but so on VK, I was getting probably 40,000 messages a week. And
Whoa!
I can't keep up with it. And so what ends up happening, Tim, is I start with the oldest message, and I work my way to the newest. But by the time I get to your message, it's a month old, right? And I respond with a quick American style, hey, thanks a lot, I appreciate it.
Oh no, I wasn't before when I was saying we only briefly talked. That wasn't a criticism. In fact, I'm pretty busy myself. So
I understand, but you understand, like, the American way of communication is very brief and like, here you are, hey, thanks, dude, appreciate it, and you move on.
Yeah.
And what I was noticing is, a Russian viewer would send me 20 pages or 20 paragraphs of something, and I would say, wow, that was really touching, thank you. And now they were offended, and they were offended that I didn't respond and like, but I'm so far behind. And so my wife said, well,
I was just going to add that for me, that also sort of happens where you'll get 10 pages of information. But the thing is that if someone gives me this maybe historical information, if I'm going to answer, I want to read it and provide an analysis. But that's like a second job. You know what I
right,
mean? If someone's
right.
going to tell me about, I don't know, the time of troubles when they had the crisis for getting the next Tsar on the throne, you know, if I'm going to read something about that, then I have to answer, okay, well, this point is wrong, this point is right. And like, no one has the time for that. But on the other hand, then I feel guilty all the time. I feel so guilty because you get these heartfelt messages, but it's kind of boxes you in anyway. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there about.
No,
but
not at all.
yeah.
And so my wife agreed to help me out with the messages, right? And as she was going through the messages, there are some how do I want to say this, Tim? There are some exuberant viewers who are really fond of me, and sometimes they send things that are inappropriate. And my wife would see it and say, "What is this?" Like, and I would say, "I have no idea what this is. It's one of 40,000 messages." Yeah. And so with that mixed with the threats. And also this idea for my family is for them personally, like their privacy has been completely stripped away overnight, you know, after the press conference.
Yeah.
And so my main thing was I need to shrink my profile for a bit, let everybody be safe, let everything kind of calm down and see what happens. So that was kind of the first thing to answer your question was safety. You know, the threats were pretty right on, and then, you know, you just start getting into over exuberant.
Well, one question though that's important is if you threaten someone's life, for what? What is the crime you are accused of?
You know, it has to do with the threats have to do with things that I say about Crimea or being pro-Putin. Or just different views that I have when they go through and they watch the different videos and we start breaking off into a political discussion. They don't like my politics, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's like with me too. Periodically, some people they don't understand that you can have a nuanced position, and I really don't like getting messages over Contactio where there's like a burning American flag or dead U.S. soldiers. You know what I mean? Like, because I hate U.S. foreign policy, that doesn't mean that I get any sort of joy out of seeing young American guys get blown to bits over nothing in the same way. But then again, also, to make it clear, I don't want any country's flag burning. Because when you burn a flag, you're sort of insulting everyone in the country. I don't know. So then maybe burning the seal of the President of the United States would be different. Because it's one guy's administration who do some not so nice things. But yeah, I don't want any burning flags, guys. You hear that? So let's not do that. But anyways, Jeremy, let me take a brief pause. We're about halfway through the interview. I'm going to let you go in, I guess, like 20 minutes. But I want to, in Russian, sort of get back to the audience here for a second. So, ребята, мы переходим на русский язык на одну секунду, что вы пишете, что несколько вопросов. На русском почему ты не переводишь, Тим? Потому что, ребята, мне надо вот осматривать, как система работает, читать ваши сообщения. Более того, у нас платные сообщения, что много происходит, и мне тоже надо немножко послушать Джереми, как он говорит. Поэтому я не могу просто делать перевод. И мы сейчас собираем деньги на перевод. Несколько людей уже очень щедро давали деньги на перевод. Есть и будет еще раз, я кидаю эту великолепную ссылку, где можно пожертвовать деньги и писать сообщения. И все вопросы сообщения платные, они задаются Джереми. Может быть, не совсем быстро, но они передаются ему. Поэтому нам нужны деньги на перевод. Я не могу сам это все делать. Ну, например, сейчас мне надо щелкать, чтобы появиться в кадре. И спасибо за ваше время и терпение. Простите, первая трансляция умерла. У Джереми почему-то аудио не было. Я исправил ошибку, и мы продолжаем разговор с Jeremy Bowlingham. Okay, Jeremy, so back to you. So anyways, I guess then maybe going away from the sad topic of harassment to something more more fun. Why are you called the professor?
Okay. So when I decided to do this, when I decided to do the YouTube channel, right, I have no tech skill whatsoever, right? I just got off of a flip phone. That's how far behind I am. And I was going to do this YouTube channel, and I was going to talk about comic books because I like comic books. I was going to talk about comic book films. And I was thinking of a name, and it was suggested to me, like, since you have low tech and your abilities are really sucky, you should be like movie community college because you're not a real college. You're not the prestigious college. You don't have all the bells and whistles. And the idea was, I was going to teach on videos, I was going to teach somebody the history of Spider-Man. So there'd be like Spider-Man 101, 102, and kind of work your way through it. And then the person said, and you should call yourself the professor, because that way you'd be like the professor at this movie community college. And and it was just tongue-in-cheek, joking around. And so we launched it, and and nobody really watched. Nobody really cared. And somebody said, hey, at the time I had 3 subscribers, and somebody said, I like your videos. Have you ever watched Bollywood films? You should check that out. And I started watching them, and the professor thing just stuck and just kept going and going. And so what we decided then to do is, sometimes I do videos with other people. Nobody has a real name then, because we'll go by different names. So my friend Bill, who will be on with me periodically, he goes by Action Jackson. My wife will go by Warrior Queen, and we just kind of have fun with nicknames with it. And that's another question I get a lot, because people always assume that I'm really a professor. I'm not. It was just a nickname that stuck and out of fun.
Oh, yeah, and on the radio we have a guy that we call the professor who's also not a professor, so I'm kind of used to that. But actually, Bollywood has done something really impressive, because as you know, we're both Americans. We know that as Americans, we like a good, bad movie. I know everyone does. I think we all like a 80s cop action movie where someone shoots a car with a handgun, yet the entire car explodes, and crazy Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners and stuff. And I think the Bollywood movies have kind of tapped into that, because you see in Facebook a lot of Western people sharing ridiculous action movie scenes from Bollywood. Yes. So do you think that maybe one day in the future, Bollywood or Chinese movies or Russian movies may actually be able to come over and gain real popularity? Because some people will tell me, they'll be like, well, Tim, I've heard that in America people watch Night Watch. Like, people as in 1% of the population, or one half of 1%. Yes, somebody probably has, and they probably wrote a blog like, yeah, I watched this Russian movie, it's pretty sweet. But I mean mainstream appeal. Do you think that they can ever tap into that mainstream appeal?
I think probably the closest that would come to it would be Indian films, or maybe Chinese films. I think Russian films are going to have a stigma that they have to get over, just with Russophobia that's in America. But you see Indian films kind of creeping that way. Bahubali to the conclusion, actually hit the top 10 in America on 400 screens, which is amazing. And you're seeing more and more Indian actors and actresses cross over into American films. And I think what it's going to take is if somebody like The Rock and Salman Khan or SRK or Amir Khan did a film together, you would see it blow up. One of the things that drove me crazy is Tom Hanks, he does that trilogy of films, and it was with the Illuminati, and I forgot what but he did one with Irfan Khan, who's my favorite actor, and in America it completely bombed. But worldwide people went crazy because Irfan Khan was in it, and the American press was like, all this says is Tom Cruise is really popular overseas. And it was like, no, it says because every idiot showed up and went and see Irfan Khan. So I think if you had a big, The Rock do something and you made it into, kind of a Terminator style film, and you got some Indian star in it too, I think they're probably got the best bet at moving over into popularity, I think.
Well, one thing that I've always been told by people is that for some reason America has a good ability to present a sort of universal hero, a universal idea that can sort of go between cultures. So when you're watching Russian movies, do you see certain scenes and you're just like, oh, this would never make it in America? No one would ever watch this. I like it, but it would never work. Is there some sort of strategy that they're missing or something?
Well, I think it is. I think a lot of Russian films appeal to the community of the viewers, the sense of community, and I think that would hold it up. I think when you talk about the American film and how they can get the universal hero out there, I think what they're really good at is appealing to an individual's ego. An individual kind of, wanderlusting in their mind, like, oh, I could be that person, I could do that thing, and having that kind of appeal to it, where the Russian films just seem to be very much about society and in the group, the collective, and I think that it's such a unique thing for the Russian people, that sense of community, and that it would only translate, I think, to other people who are like that in society. I think for America to embrace this kind of idea that you see in Russian films, you really kind of have to change hearts and minds in America one at a time, like hand-to-hand combat, not a mass like, oh, that was so incredible. And I think it just would take time.
Well, yeah, and in fact, someone gave more of a question, more of a comment, that in one of your videos, Jeremy said that in his childhood, no, that's not it. Where was in our country, there exists a political term called people's diplomacy. In short, this means direct contact, contact between the normal people in various countries, not between politicians. And this has a real active, I forgot what Voplashenie is, in the 60s, especially between young people and teenagers. Well, anyways, that was kind of more of a comment rather than a question. So let me turn it into a question. Do you think that what you're doing is what this gentleman refers to as people's diplomacy? And do you think it is the job of people to try to represent their country, not the government, but the masses? Because in a way, you do represent America, whether you like it or not. You do represent America in Russia, especially right now.
Yeah, I think people do have a responsibility to do that. I think it's just being a common, decent person. One of the criticisms that will be brought up to me, like sometimes Russians will want to put me on trial for every war crime they can imagine America has done, from the Native Americans to slavery to Hiroshima. And my answer to them is always, listen, I could do the same. I could make a list of perceived war crimes going all the way back to Lenin and up to the future, but that's not why I'm here. These are politicians doing this. This is about the common person. And so I think it's helpful to relate to people just on a commonality. There is no, we have political views because we're individuals, we're people. We have ideas and thoughts about things, but I think it is so helpful, like, to just have this connection of ideas and talking, and there are people like that I know, Americans who were like me, who are now kind of entering into the same process of like reevaluating Russia. The guy Action Jackson, Bill Gaines, he's on VK. That I do videos with sometimes is just like, started off very much the same way, but seeing the interaction, he's kind of come along in this idea of changing hearts and minds.
Well, we know about your story, but what makes then Action Jackson? What is his motivation? How has he sort of changed? What's driving other people?
They see the positive response. They see the stereotypes being pulled down. They see this interaction that happens, and it's appealing. Because as much as Americans would not admit it, America's a very lonely place. You even look at like the greetings. Like you can walk down the street of America and people will smile and nod at you, but try to get to know them. Good luck, right?
Well, I think in a lot of ways,
it's just the opposite.
We're very divided. I think we're very divided in America, and that's one thing where I'm actually sort of like a weirdo who lives by himself, sort of a shut-in a lot of ways. I'm not. People think because I'm okay at speaking that, I think we got a donation. Excuse me, all donations must be read. Let's see. It is, what did it say? Jeremy, we're waiting for you in Russia. Yes, that's a topic that's come up a lot. In fact, someone wrote without paying for it, but it was such a fantastic question or message. He was like, basically, Jeremy, if you don't come to Russia, get bent. So the question is, are you going to come to Russia or are you going to get bent?
At some point in time, I will come to Russia. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, going back, I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm very good at knocking myself off of it. But one thing is I always felt in America is that in a lot of ways, like I'm not exactly Mr. Outgoing just because I work in the media, but still, you kind of get in this rhythm where you wake up, you're in a house, a closed area, you go right into a car, possibly in a garage, you're in a closed garage, closed car, you drive, you don't walk anywhere, you park as close as you can to the building of your office or wherever, go inside. It's like this continuous sort of being blocked off. And I don't really experience that here. People seem to not do that, or many people just maybe it's maybe a lack of money in their pocket. Who knows? The whole culture of gulat, of just walking around for the hell of it, is very popular here, and it seems a little bit freeing. I don't know, but like I said, I'm not exactly Mr. Social. I don't walk down the street going, "Hey guys, what's going on?" That's not who I am.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure. You can throw it back at me. We've got 14 minutes left. Yes.
I got two questions for you.
Please do.
Number one, do Russians have front porches? And if so, do they spend a lot of time on them? And number two, when you go to bed and you sleep and you dream, do you dream in English or Russian?
Oh, the second question is easy. Both. I think in my head and dream in both languages, depending on the circumstance. But I would say definitely I speak English better. But people have said that I speak English now very strangely. Because I get like basically when I'm in my mind, sometimes I'm looking for a Russian expression or logic now, even when I speak English, and it makes me kind of stutter even worse than I've always sort of stuttered before. And also, I've really lost my Cleveland accent in a lot of ways because when you talk to foreigners all the time, you can't be like, well, yeah, man, I'm going down to the store, going to pick up, a 6-pack or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't talk, or they'll just look at you like, what is going on? You have to be like, I have to go to the store, and I would like to buy a 6-pack, because it's a special term, a 6-pack of beer. Maybe Pepsi, maybe water. I don't know. That was just the first thing that came to mind. But you know what I mean? So anyways, the other question was about... What was the first question? The porches? Well, the thing is, most Russians live in apartments. Unfortunately, there was a man called Khrushchev, and he decided that after World War II, he would make everyone, basically to rebuild the country, everyone would get a teeny tiny apartment. And, of course, people are going to yell at me. They're like, Tim, but they had to do it. Yeah, I understand. After World War II, so many things were lost. There were so many people who were homeless. There were so many people who were living, 12 people in a room that they had to get going and get something built. So I forgive them for that. But in the long run, we have this culture of apartment dwelling, which I don't think is very good for us as men. I talked about this in the previous episode where, you're living probably with babushka, with your grandmother, and it's as a guy, you're not going to be able to, like, build stuff or rock out. Because, in America we have garage bands, right? You go out in your garage. Turn on your guitar, rock out, man. And I think in some ways that lack of space is very bad for society, and especially for men, because it doesn't give you the chance to experiment. Even one time, my wife said this. This is typical wife talk. I had to saw something to fix my bed. She was like, is there any way you can saw that wood so that way no sawdust comes out? Like, oh, dude, come on. But porches, many Russians have dachas, which are like country houses, second houses. And, from the olden days, and even in the Soviet period, there were still a lot of houses. If we get outside of a city, you're going to start to see a lot more houses. But I wouldn't exactly say sitting on the porch, but things like gazebos are really popular. But like I said, just definitely that sitting around, hanging out, chatting is definitely very popular here. Or like I said, there's gulat, which is just walking around for no reason. Walking around for no reason is big time entertainment here, and it's a fantastic first date. But you're already married, I'm married, so I guess that really doesn't matter anymore. But it is also a cheap first date, so that's always nice. There's this expression in Russian that they say about gulat. There's an expression that, darkness is the friend of the young. Because one thing is, especially when you live in these Khrushchev-era apartments, there's nowhere to, do certain deeds. So I think that part of gulat culture may also be connected to the fact that you can make out behind a tree in the middle of the darkness and get away with it. We're guys, I remember how I was when I was 14. I would pretty much take any opportunity that would come by. So that was that. What's also something interesting, going back to you, Jeremy, one of these sort of mysteries is everyone would just write me, you have to talk to him. You have to talk to this Jeremy guy. You have to. I'm like, I don't know, but they don't even really seem to have ever understood. But I don't know. I'm having a good time talking to you now. Everything's very nice. We have how many minutes left? We have 9 minutes left. We do an hour-long program. Let me see if I can find an actual question from the people who are too cheap to pay. Jeremy. I can't hear your comments. Jeremy, in the video about the bear, too loud sound video, I cannot hear your comments. I don't quite know what that means.
Sorry.
Прокрутил весь чат, что данный чат, ссылка не видно. Я так понимаю, стрим в реальном времени. He's asking, is the stream live? Oh, it's live, baby. In the chat. There is Sushi. So, тем проблемы со ссылками. How can there be a problem with the links to donate? The link is right. Here, take the link again. It's right. Anyways, we're not getting questions. Let me go to my list of questions then. Here we go. Okay. Sorry for my lack of professionalism. It is very hard to monitor all this stuff, and yet also...
what software are you using?
It's called OBS. It's free. But unfortunately, it wasn't very free because I had to update my computer, put a solid-state disk in it, get Windows running, get this, what is it called, an audio mixer, a microphone. Basically, I had to spend like $600 to start doing this stuff. So I'm really relying on the donations. I hope that one day I'll get the $600 back. So it says, a question. At one time in the USSR, people also would speak in whispers, and now it's come to America. I think that might be a quote from you or in regards to you. So here's something. Do you feel that there might be some sort of almost culture, a liberal culture of fear that is happening in America? You know what I mean? Where it's like, you're not a feminist, you are Satan. You're fired.
I think it's fascism. I think fascism is on the rise, and you see it showing itself. With what you just referenced, Tim, it's like, it's a new era of fascism where we're going to make you self-impose on yourself through shaming and whatnot, and changing of the culture, up to as you move further. I think as you move further left, the more radicalized it becomes, to the point where it's not just a tool of political correctness to keep you from expressing yourself. But now we're going to do things like threaten violence, and we see this happening in America with people who are pro-Trump going to rallies, and they're getting attacked by the left. And there's all these different things in America right now about how to assassinate Trump. That's coming from Hollywood and from the celebrities. And it's unfortunate, and it's I think it's part of the corrosion that you see, the imploding that you see. There doesn't seem to be any more men to say this is wrong. I don't care what you do. This is wrong. I'm not going to do it. And everything is kind of just rolling into this feminazi mentality of America. And that's one of the things that I've noticed in Russia, is that you don't seem to have feminism like there is in America, which is fascinating.
Well, it kind of came differently because in a lot of ways, from what I understand, is that a lot of the feminist stuff came from bourgeois women in Victorian England. And if you ever listen to that guy, the Canadian philosopher, as he calls himself, which seems like a paradox to me, Stefan Molyneux, he always says that none of those women, these rich British women, when they wanted feminism, none of them wanted to go work in a mine with the men. And in a lot of ways, I think what it's becoming is that for a lot of people, there's this very naive idea that I should be able to be whatever I want to be, if I want to be a man today or a woman tomorrow, or if I want to become a fish or whatever, that I can do whatever I want, and no one can tell me what to do. And I think that that's an interesting fantasy idea, but there's a cruel reality that we are what we are. You know what I mean? And for better or worse. Because, I've always wanted to have, like, a really brutal voice, like a really tough guy voice. But unfortunately, I don't, which is really sad. And I think it's just sort of connected to this. And also living too well. I think a lot of these people live too well. Because like I was even saying, the poorer you are, not always, but the poorer you are, the more that all that stuff seems really silly. I think you have to really grow up in a very coddled, middle class, upper middle class environment in order to believe in some of this stuff. Because I was a Peace Corps volunteer actually, and there was only one other guy in Peace Corps. Because you talk about everyone's backgrounds. There's only one other guy who was poor, but he's super liberal, and it's hard for me to imagine. He even mentioned that him and his family had to eat rabbits to survive when he was a kid. And it's always hard for me to imagine, but he is Mr. Liberal. He likes his liberal ideas. He's not traditional at all. So I don't know. It's a very, very odd thing. But the main thing that we were getting at was the sort of culture of fear that can arise. And one of the things that's very ironic about those type of people is they always claim that everything's from freedom, do what you want. But if you don't do what we want, then you're bad.
Right.
Because with those videos and things regarding killing Trump as the president, first off, suggesting that someone should kill the president of the United States is a crime. Because and it always has been, because certain freedom of speech is basically protected, but freedom of calls to action is not. And it's so interesting because only a few years ago, when Obama was in office, those same people, if someone said that they suggested doing some play where they kill Obama or something, I don't know. In Othello, I think Othello survived to the end. I'm trying to think of a play where that might be the right context. But, they would be outraged. How can you do this? And with this, especially with Trump, and the recent elections, you can see how literally childlike these politicians are. Like, remember with when a lot of people from the Trump campaign criticized Hillary Clinton's health, they're like, how can you talk about someone's health and their age? That doesn't matter. When those same people said John McCain was too old. He was too old. He was senile. He was nuts. And then then the opposite party says the same thing about Hillary. How can you do that? Or two, I think it was the Republicans who would in outrage say that the president cannot speak to the Iranians. This is treason. And now that Trump seems to go to the Middle East and talk to the Iranians, the Democrats are saying the same thing. That the liberals are like, how dare you? How dare you speak to those evil Iranians and Russians and Saudis or whatever? And it's just, because now that I've sort of worked in the whole political realm long enough, I can see that it just bounces back and forth.
Yeah,
and it's really depressing for the future. Let's see. Maybe we have some questions. Sadly, it's hard to... Jeremy, собрать деньги на лодку с Аляски. Are you planning to gather some money to build a boat to go to from Alaska to Kamchatka? Let's see. We're getting some fresh questions here.
Yes. That's always me and Action Jackson. That's our. We did a video where we talked about what it would be like to be illegal aliens, because we live in Arizona and we have, a legal alien population, and we talked about in the video about how to sneak across the border into Russia, and we had a whole plan of getting to Alaska and getting a boat and coming across and hitting Siberia. Very good. Whoever sent that is a super fan. Tell them thank you for that. Very good.
Yeah. Well, you should be watching right now, so give us a link to the donations, OMFG. One second. Ребята, ссылка там даже на экране прямо сейчас. Смотрите, что вы можете в видео. Я отправляю это очень часто. И если вы не можете скопировать, то это просто. Это donations.ru Team Kirby Russia. Мой, как сказать, моя кличка. Окей? У нас осталось, сколько минут осталось? Сейчас нам надо посмотреть на Джереми, чтобы понять, сколько осталось. У нас осталось 1 минута. We have 1 minute left. So, anyways, Jeremy, do you have any final thoughts? Maybe a message that you'd like to send to people in Russia or really anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to say just thank you for everything, for your support and the love that you've shown me and my family. I really appreciate it. I ask the Russian people to be patient with us. I think the turmoil that goes on, especially when it comes to Russophobia, at some point in time will run its course. You already see it starting to break down in the news today. They had Democrats kind of saying, we kind of need to get off this idea of this and really kind of come up with our own positions, which is kind of a big step. Yeah. So my closing words would be just thank you so much. I really support it and appreciate all the kindness that the Russian people have shown me.
Well, yeah, and I just like to add into what you said that during the Cold War, on the seal of the Soviet Union, it said proletarians of the world unite. And unite, I mean unite against capitalism. And when there was the Cold War, there was at least an ideological threat or something more real. And now after that, I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that there's no motivation on the Russian side. Because was Russia going to invade the United States to force everyone to drink tea instead of coffee? Like, the objective, there is none. And so I think that this, people are starting to open their eyes that this is some sort of inflated silliness that they're trying to blame other countries. Basically, if another country wants to defend its own national interests against the United States, then somehow that's bad. Well, guess what? Everyone wants to defend their interests. You know what I mean? So anyways, but then again, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. So Jeremy Bowling, thank you very much for coming in. And people are writing that they want you to return to social media. So as soon as the storm dives down, they want to see you on Facebook and contact you. So you have a fantastic evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, let's turn off Jeremy. Goodbye. Let's go. Okay. And и давайте... Тогда, ребята, Джереми прощался с вами. Я еще тут немножко. Опять это только я и только мы. Но не вечером. У Джереми там в родном штате уже ему пора спать. Поэтому перед сном с Тимом Кирби и с Джереми Боулинг сегодня. Многие писали, что вы не можете отправлять деньги, вы хотите. Но посмотрите, я много раз отправил ссылку. Даже если ссылку тут на экране, то все равно можно посмотреть и вот печатать, как сказать, в браузер. Это должно работать. Может быть, YouTube на самом деле блокирует ссылки в сообщениях. Если это да, то давайте я постараюсь это писать не как ссылку. И система не позволяет. Отлично, чудесно. У нас было очень много технических проблем сегодня. Но то, что я хочу вам сказать, что спасибо за то, что вы на самом деле помогли мне найти Джереми, потому что это народная программа. И что это значит? Это значит, что если вы сможете найти мне гостя, то я только рад. Я работаю очень много, я даже создал программу перед сном, чтобы просто перед сном раз в неделю, 2 раза в неделю включить камеру и обсуждать вопросы, которые вы мне задаете. Понимаете? Чтобы был связь с вами, чтобы возвращаться в YouTube. И более того, мы с Джереми обсуждали, как иногда бывают такие волны сообщений, и это невозможно отвечать на эти сообщения. И вот это прекрасный способ отвечать именно на ваши сообщения, ваши идеи, ваши концепции. Мы вчера обсуждали, в прошлый раз обсуждали мужской характер и гангстерские фильмы, как «Братва» и «Бригада» и прочее. Это было искреннее сообщение просто от... не сообщение, а комментарий в группе, потому что у нас есть группа ВКонтакте для перед сном, можно участвовать в группе и писать свои сообщения. Мне это интересно. Я не хочу просто придумывать какие-нибудь темы и вот заставить вам просто послушать, потому что вы можете это делать, делать каждый день на телевидении, просто включить телевизор и получать. Я хочу, чтобы здесь была какая-то обратная связь. Еще раз, если вы знаете интересных гостей, англоязычных или русскоязычных, то связайтесь с ними сами и постарайтесь получать добро на интервью со мной. Я только рад. Единственное в том, что экстремистов не хочется. Хочется более добрые люди, более веселые люди. И есть некоторые темы, которые я не буду трогать. Например, я не буду продвигать МММ на этом канале, несмотря на то, что многие из вас так любят такую стратегию заработок денег. Тим, что скажешь? Сможешь поговорить с Джой Уомак? Она балерина? Это кто? Кто такая? Кто такой? Кто такая? Девушка такая? Джой Уомак. Тим, мы не смотрим телевизор. No TV. Как сказать, может быть. Поэтому вы здесь со мной. Вы смотрите меня, поэтому я очень благодарен. Вот сейчас у нас есть 4100 рублей. И, конечно, половина идет мне, потому что надо платить за оборудование, поэтому у меня осталось 2500 рублей найти переводчика. Посмотрим. Я буду этим заниматься сам. Если один из вас хочет за 200 переводить этот эпизод, вы сможете. Я просто хочу еще раз просить прощения. Просить прощения. Мозгов нет. Что у нас был вот такой вот плохой случай с аудио сегодня, в конце концов. Да, балерина, ты на нее ссылался. Когда-то, да, но я забыл ее имя. Но, короче, по поводу Joy Womack, я с удовольствием поговорю с ней, но вам надо с ней связаться. Я не буду. Это, как сказать, ваш долг в народной программе. В YouTube не пропускает ссылку про донат. Стоит запрет. Надо под видео сразу установить ссылку. На самом деле, если вы нажимаете на эту штучку, в принципе, это должен вас перейти на этот сайт. Более того, если я просто тупо пишу ссылку здесь, давайте чуть-чуть редактирую, то вы увидите, вот, чуть-чуть убрал, вот вы увидите вот это там. Вот эту ссылку, это даже на экране и видно. Хорошо? Вот так. Да, поэтому я не знаю, я надеюсь, что вы не разочаровались. Может быть, вы немножко не поняли то, что Джереми сказал, но это было приятно с ним общаться, потому что вы все хотели, чтобы я с ним связался. Я набрал, я говорю, на английском долго говорил, уже говорю, набрал много ваших мыслей, сообщений, и я постарался оформить все в одну кучу и задавать ему разные тогда вопросы. Да, вот, тогда. Итак, дорогие друзья, это все. Хотя мой день начинается, Джереми сейчас, может быть, даже уже сладко спит. Это был «Перед сном» с Тимом Kirby. Спасибо еще раз Джереми Боллинг за то, что он приехал. И спасибо вам, особенно одному человеку, кто привел Джереми ко мне на эту передачу. Это не был я, это было вы. Потому что это ваша программа тоже. Спасибо большое и сладких снов.